those opposite are clearly consistently listening to some form of echo chamber, land of Danistan cheer squad focus group with their constant negativity. I mean, do you want Australia to fail? Why are you constantly rooting for Australia to fail? And I would have thought Senator Keneally, as a senator for New South Wales, that she might have been able to muster some state pride, if not national one. Australia is now vaccinating people at a higher rate than any other country in the world. And in fact, the only thing more impressive than that is the fact that New South Wales is actually leading that charge. So what that means is New South Wales is now vaccinating people at a faster rate than any other jurisdiction globally. Now, I, for one, as a fellow New South Wales senator like Senator Keneally, I'm extremely proud of the people in my home state who have gone out and got vaccinated. That when Gladys Berejiklian set a target of 6 million vaccinations this month, that New South Wales Welshmen heard the call, and they've exceeded those 6 million vaccinations with still a week to go in August. Now, this is something we should be celebrating. But instead, here we go again with the political point scoring, the talking down of Australians, and what Australians are actually going out to do in record numbers. In fact, there have been over 17 million doses of vaccinations delivered today. But really what's so remarkable about that is just 3 days ago, we were at 16 million vaccinations. So for those of you that suffer with the, struggle with the maths here, that means in the past 3 days we've seen 1 million doses delivered. Now, no one could have got their first and second jab within 3 days, which means there's been 1 million Australians received a vaccination over the past 3 days. So I would like to say thank you. Thank you to them for making themselves safer. Thank you for making your loved ones safer. And thank you for assisting all Australians get back to their lives without lockdowns. But perhaps that's where we find the problem. Perhaps you don't want to return to any form of normality. Perhaps you've developed some form of fetish for lockdowns, and I mean each to their own. But this predilection affects millions of Australians and hundreds of thousands of businesses. We need to break the lockdown cycle, and we know via the Doherty modelling we can start to do that at a 70% vaccination rate. So just let me break it down for you. More than 85% of over 70s have received their first dose, with 58 their second. More than 75 of over 50s have received their first dose, and almost 45% their second. And more than 50% of over 16s are protected with their first dose, and 31% their second. But what we also know is that both New South Wales and the ACT, they have over 60% of all of those eligible having received their first dose. Now, unfortunately, Queensland and Western Australia are lagging well behind with their numbers in just the mid-40 percentile. And whilst those opposite, very fond of asking questions about being a race, well, here you go. Have your race. Get onto your state premiers and start encouraging them to get their citizens vaccinated. And I know those of you from outside of the premier state, that is New South Wales, maybe get onto those premiers and your CHOs and get them to understand this requirement. And perhaps while we're on it, Senator Keneally might like to ask the member for Maribyrnong, who's such a fan of the AZ, to give the current opposition leader a call. Firstly, he could teach him how to actually say the words AstraZeneca, and then perhaps he could start to get out there and practice by encouraging people to get the vaccine rather than desperately trying to slow it down with his fear-mongering. Because those of us on this side actually understand the tolls these lockdowns are having. But perhaps the mental health toll that these lockdowns are taking is beyond you. That the rate of teenage suicide and self-harm is rising. That we have a generation of kids that, quite frankly, these lockdowns, they're breaking. We know that Lifeline is receiving record-breaking numbers of calls each and every day. This morning I heard Roderick Rees on Sky News. He was speaking with Peter Stefanovic. His business, Cairns Adventure Group, it's unlikely to survive if he can't at the very least get interstate travellers to visit Cairns. And I'm sure Senator Green will be on the phone to Premier Palaszczuk pleading with her to ensure that fellow Australians are able to travel interstate at Christmas to not only see their families, but to be able to support these businesses who are absolutely at breaking point. But when you hear these premiers go against what the National Cabinet devised, who agreed the plan and then walk outside to political point score and further jeopardise the well-being and the livelihoods of so many within their own states. I mean, do they even begin to comprehend the damage that they are doing to not only the business owners, because I know those opposite aren't too fussed with small business owners, but the workers employed in those small businesses? The uncertainty that this prevarication causes for those workers when they don't know if the small business they work for will be able to survive. So I remain an optimist. I am hopeful that very soon your focus groups will tell you that the day of lockdowns being a vote winner is over. I am forever hopeful that you will start to support Australians. Support all Australians and their families, their jobs and their businesses. Because if you don't, those opposites start to understand these devastating consequences of refusing to accept that we need to start to live with this virus in the same way we live with the flu, that the mental health consequences will far outweigh the damages that COVID could ever do. And whilst those opposite continue their scare campaign and fear-mongering, I'd actually like to congratulate Victor Dominello, the New South Wales Minister for Customer Service and Minister for Digital, on the creation of the inclusion card. What he's doing here is he's allowing businesses to check people in rather than the other way around. So it's this sort of innovation that's going to assist in opening up New South Wales. I mean, if only all the premiers had the same focus. And we know that there are people that struggle using a smartphone, aren't that tech savvy, and in fact, I still have a giggle when I think about one of the posts I saw last week that someone put up that their mother wasn't quite sure to do with all the photos of the QR codes they'd taken because they'd hold their phone up and take a photo of it rather than checking in because the technology was just maybe a little sophisticated. But, it's also really good and an important movement forward for a lot of people with a disability that would struggle with the same sort of technology checking in. And I would like to acknowledge that from tomorrow, 25th of August, all NDIS participants over 12 years of age will be eligible to get vaccinated. Every NDIS participant over the age of 12 will be eligible. Now, for those wondering why it's not under 12, it's because no vaccine is approved for anyone under 12. So when we all start chiming in about how many children are going to be vaccinated, no vaccine globally is approved anywhere around the world for children under 12. So my son, gorgeous Freddo Frog, he's 12, and I, for one, will be getting him vaccinated as soon as possible. Because I understand, unlike some of these anti-vaxxers out there, that vaccines don't cause autism. What they do, though, is ensure people with autism don't suffer this serious illness. I'm also pretty sure vaccines contribute to decent spelling and use of correct grammar, but that's a whole other matter for us to discuss at another day. But so what I would like to say to those opposite, and really it's a very, very simple message, I think even those opposite may be able to understand it. Please stop the politicking. Please start to back Australians. And to Senator Keneally, be proud of your state. Let's get back to life. Let's get back to travel and help support the mental health of all Australians.